Do you ever have a pair of socks you love, but you just can't imagine mending anymore? Today I thought I'd show you a method to attach a sole to the bottom of socks that have seen better days so that you can keep wearing them. First step I'm going to do is cut out some patterns for the shape of the sole. I've taken some boot insoles that are the right size. You could also use a shoe. Just make sure there's not a lot of extra bulk on the outside of the shoe because that would make the size bigger than you would want it to be. So I'm just going to put one insole down, hold it, trace all the way around. There we go. And then I'm just going to cut those out and then we'll move on. So one thing to note about shapes you've cut out, traced and then cut out, is you want to cut inside the line. If I cut on the outside of the line, I'm adding the distance, however wide the line is, which is not really that wide, but also a little rim of paper or fabric or whatever just outside that line as well. So you could end up with, depending, you know, how wide you cut, 1/2 centimeter or more of extra space. Next step is to cut out the fabric. I've chosen this wool felt, which, funny story actually, I absolutely love wearing merino wool, and I have this navy blue, just so soft and comfy merino wool sweater that I've worn for years and years and years and years and put back together so many times. I absolutely love it, but it's a little bit big on me, always has been. And I saw this black merino wool sweater at the thrift shop and I thought, oh, this will be great. But anyway, I got home and I put this sweater in the wash. I washed it on cold, it was good, and it felted so badly. It's so tiny, I can't even wear it. So this is a piece of the sleeve. So I'm going to put the pattern on. You'll notice I've switched scissors. I have a pair of paper scissors and a pair of fabric scissors. If you cut paper with fabric scissors, they dull quickly and you end up having to buy new ones all the time, which is kind of counterintuitive to the whole reduce your consumption thing we're trying to do here. If you want a warmer slipper, you could make 4 of these. And then I would just go around, like lay one on top of the other. Go around and blanket stitch them together. And then you could apply it to the bottom and you would have a thicker slipper sole. But my mom loves to wear these socks in her rubber boots. So I don't want to add too much bulk to the bottom. Otherwise they may not fit as nicely as they used to. Before we move on to attaching the sole to the slipper, I think it would be really cool to decorate it. You know those socks you buy sometimes that have like pretty little words and fun surprises where it's like one side says, bring me some chocolate, and the other side goes, and no one gets hurt. So let's make a little just hand stitching surprise on the bottom. So I was thinking about how I wanted to decorate these soles, and I thought about doing like a bleach painting on them because they're black, but I don't have any bleach in the house because we use oxygen bleach, which doesn't actually take color out of stuff. So what I went with is this beeswax soaked cotton. I had it left over from some beeswax wraps that I made a while ago that I just made way too many of, and I didn't need as many as I had. Part of the reason I chose the beeswax to decorate and not something else is because it will provide a bit of grip, which is nice for slippers, in my opinion, without providing bulk. So it's not an actual hard sole, but it just keeps you from slipping a bit. Another fabric might do that. There might be some pleathers or leathers or some of that old silicone backing you have on rugs. Anything like that would probably be a good option. Pin those on. The nice thing about this fabric is that it won't fray anymore because of the beeswax. No precision with this at all. I'm going to attach the smaller squares later on once I've got the big ones affixed. All right, that's pinned well enough. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Now you could use pretty well any kind of thread you want it to go through here. Just remember, if you have a thick or coarse thread, you need a large eye needle. I'm using this 100% linen. It's a waxed linen. I didn't wax it, but you totally could. Just take a little bit of beeswax usually, and after you put it on your needle, just kind of run the thread through the beeswax on your fingers, and it just keeps all the threads together. And guess what? You can use any stitch you want to attach these. You could use a running stitch, what's called a stab stitch, where you just go up, pull it through, and then stab it down again and pull it through. You could do a whip stitch, which I am going to do a whip stitch. Whip stitch is a great way to adhere something when you just want to go over the edge of it. It can be useful for things that you think will fray, a little bit like overlocking on a machine. But not nearly as effective. Okay, I'm just going to go all the way around this piece and the other one. And then I may use a different stitch for the front of the foot there. See you shortly, and we will sew the sole onto the sock. And I'll show you how to get it so that it actually hits where you want it, and so that it's the same on both sides. All right, so I've attached my beeswax squares to the bottom of the sole. Like I said, I went around this one with a whip stitch on both sides. And then on the top, I decided to do something a little bit different. So there was a dark blue outline all the way around, and I just traced it with a simple straight stitch. And then I did a straight stitch around the outside of the border. Because it's wool felt, the thread has blended really nicely into the fabric, and I don't think you'll feel that under your foot. But if you were worried about it, this would be a good time to attach a second piece of felt on top and just blanket stitch along the edges. I left the thread on the back end because I'm going to sew these last little accent pieces on next. Okay, so I have the decorated wool felt pieces. I have the original insoles I used for the measurement. I have the sad and forlorn socks. Have some leftover sock yarn from my stash, a darning needle, and a bunch of pins. So let's put it all together. I'm going to take these insoles and put them inside the socks. And most socks aren't going to have a right and a left. Either way, it doesn't really matter as long as when you put the insole inside the sock, it covers all the holes on both socks. They look kind of funny. Okay, next step, I'm going to pin these to the slipper so I know where to sew them. Once again, just make sure that the sole covers the holes. That's the whole point of what we're doing. I'm going to thread the needle. I'm just choosing sock yarn because it will blend the nicest with what these are made of. If you don't have sock yarn, you could use any kind of yarn, string, thread, leather, twine. And again, I'm doing that thing where I fold the loop over and then push it through. I don't like putting thick yarns through end first. It doesn't work as well, I find. It just makes such a headache. So, as always, you could do any stitch you felt like with this. You could make it a giant explosion of stitches and just slow stitch for days on the bottom. You could also do just a really basic kind of running stitch along the side. So if you go in, make sure you pick up the layer of the sock and the sole, and then go back in, pick up another layer, come out, kind of like you're pinning, and then pull it through, and it'll attach it really well, and it makes this sort of just basic straight stitch line. Today, I'm going to go for a blanket stitch. Starting my blanket stitch, catching both layers, coming through. So remember, with blanket stitch, you need to sort of catch this yarn here. So it's like you make a half circle and then make your stitch inside the half circle. My needle comes out and this is still underneath it, not on top of it, underneath it. And now I've essentially tied both layers together. And I can do it again. If you want a nice even look, try and space your stitches the same length apart. Sometimes I care about that and sometimes I don't. So it's certainly not necessary to have them all be the same. That is such a cool thing about making stuff. Like, you making it for you. So the creation of it can be for you, the enjoyment of it while you're making it, as well as how it is at the end. Except that I'm not actually making this for me. I'm making it for my mom. These are my mom's socks that she absolutely loves and was like, can you do something with these? I find when I'm working with really long threads like this, less knots happen if I sort of hold the thread out from the fabric, because the twists and tensions kind of come out on my thumb here or finger instead of happening right up near the needle. I'll show you what happens if I don't do that. Ta-da! We're stuck already. And now I have to untangle that. Okay, so I'm just going to go all the way around this one and all the way around the next one. And then I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Happy stitching! So here at the end, I want to show you what I did to close it off. So this is the original place where I went in, because I went in that way and came out there, and then started the stitches here. So I have this little tail. So here at the end, what I've done is I've done another blanket stitch right into that hole where this tail comes out of. So essentially retracing it. I'm going to leave that guy there, and then I'm going to come around here, whoop, and hook into this one we created that doesn't actually have a leg. So now I have a continuous line. I know the spacing's weird, but who cares? A continuous line here. And then I want to lock that in. So you don't need to do this. You could just push it to the back and then weave it in. But socks are so hard wearing that I want to be sure it stays. So I'm just going to retrace this one and then pull it to the back. Let's take the insole out. Look, it's a slipper. Pull that thread through. And you can hardly tell that's even there. I'll pull this one through as well. And a quick note about weaving in. You can do it with the needle or with a crochet hook. I use both at different times. I wouldn't knot here because knots right under your foot can be very uncomfortable. So just weave it in, lots of over, under, over, under, over, under, change directions a few times. Remember that you have a black, or whatever color yours is, you have a sole under here, so you can hide all of your stitches. Nobody's going to see what you do as long as you don't go all the way through the sole. You just want to be extra sure that your ends aren't going to come out. Because if they unravel, then obviously you're mending the sock again, which is the whole purpose we're trying to avoid here. Best of luck and happy stitching!